Hello and welcome. This is the latest episode of the Fitness Reborn podcast. My name is Sean from Renaissance Fitness Personal Training, where we put movement ahead of workouts. My guest today is Aaron Hines. Aaron Hines is a fitness professional based out of Nashville, Tennessee, United States. And he's the owner of Premier Performance Training. And really interested to have Aaron on here because it seems like he has similar interests to me in terms of how to train, who we like to train, and kind of similar philosophies. And Aaron, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, no worry. So what I like to start out with is I like to give people a context in which we're having a conversation. So I like to kind of go back and kind of hear where people's origin stories come from. So, why is what you do? We're going to get into that. Who you do it in the name of, and just who you are in general. So kind of give us a little backstory here, or what is the story of Aaron Hines?
Yeah, so Sean, I got, I guess you can bring it all the way back to probably 21 years ago, where I kind of got interested in health and fitness via a guy whose son was on the football team at my local high school. He was a bodybuilder back in the day, and at the time, I guess I couldn't even lift 45-pound bar off the bench press. One, because I didn't know what I was doing, and two, I was kind of a lazy high school kid. But I was kind of drawn to him because, he knew what he was talking about, what he was doing as far as fitness goes. So I just I took that up, took his, I guess, challenge, you'd say, and he said, hey, meet me at the local Gold's Gym down the road, and we'll work out on Monday. And so from then on, I kind of got hooked on it, and that's kind of where I started as far as my fitness profession, or enjoying, I guess, working out. So, at that time I was probably like 170 pounds, 6'1", 170, trying to play offensive line in high school. So my biggest struggle was, putting on weight and getting stronger, with that. And so by taking his advice and doing those things, I was able to, do so. And I ended up, getting a collegiate football scholarship where I played offensive line at a small school in West Tennessee. So from then on, it was kind of like, man, I really like this working out stuff. So let's see what I can do maybe for a living. And so in college, they only had athletic training as far as their program itself. So the program was athletic training and I guess taping ankles and injury prevention. So it wasn't really something I was too interested in. I was more about the health and fitness of getting people faster, stronger, more athletic. So I ended up just moving schools and losing about 25 credit hours. So it took me 5 years to graduate instead of 4. But when I graduated with a degree in exercise or health and human performance with an emphasis in exercise science from a small agriculture school in West Tennessee called University of Tennessee at Martin. And at that time, I thought I was going to graduate and conquer the world and do everything health and fitness related. And I knew everything, but that's when the kind of first, I guess, recession hit back in 2009, 2010. And so I was humbled of the fact that I didn't know anything, and ended up actually working at a grocery store for about a year because couldn't find a job and what I really wanted to. So from there, I was like, man, this is not what I want to do. So I ended up applying to a lot of different schools around town and Nashville area, but ended up getting in at Florida State University for my master's degree in exercise physiology. So I finished that up in probably a year and a half. I went year round. I came in January, left the next August. And then I moved back to Nashville after that stint. But in the time I was working in grad school, I worked at a local gym. It was probably one of the oldest gyms in town. It was your bodybuilding, and these dudes were twice the size of I was. They could do pull-ups and chin-ups and, bicep curl, 100-pound dumbbells. And so I thought it was like what I wanted to do there as well. But I ended up getting stuck with all the problematic clients who no one else wanted. And problematic just means they had hip issues, or they had, my first client had rods down her spinal column from a fracture or car wreck. And so not really anybody we had on staff knew how to work with them. So that was kind of my goal to fix all the broken clients or potential clients that we had in the facility. So that's kind of where I got my interest of working with orthopedic. But with that, following the footsteps of fixing all the broken clients that no one wanted. It wasn't your perfect client. It wasn't your 25-year-old who could do bench press and squats and squat jumps and those things. It was a lot of like, we got to figure out what we can really do with this person so we can set them up for success. So that's where I kind of got the itch as far as working with those individuals. But once I moved back home, I worked at the local YMCA, man. I think that's a good place for anybody to start who's just getting into health and fitness. The ins and outs of membership, pricing membership, signing people up, getting people the ins and outs of what your facility is really about. And then on top of selling memberships and scanning people in, I started doing a little bit of training there as well. Didn't like it as much, but it was a good learning experience as far as like teaching boot camps and other things with that. So, fast forward a little bit further, I ended up leaving there and becoming a health coach for about 3 years for a Fortune 500 company, working with employees of Dollar General, Dollar General, Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals, Hershey Chocolate, State of Tennessee employees. And we were just basically working to establish health and fitness habits and lifestyle choices for those individuals who are triggered for our program. And triggering the program is just basically you're filling out a health history questionnaire and anything that would consider you being abnormally unhealthy. It could be a higher weight, BMI, blood pressure. We just coach you through that program. And it was every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, we tried to just establish what you're working on, what you could do better on, and just to fill out basically just a better overall fitness plan for the individual to lead them to a healthy lifestyle with that. So I spent there 3 years, Sean. And then after that, I ended up, a buddy of mine who I interned with 2009 had a pretty sweet gig training pre and post orthopedic injuries in a big time orthopedic clinic here in town. And so I took that plunge, and man, I was working with 80-year-old clients. I was working with your high-level athletes, pro athletes, semi-pro athletes, and just your average Joe who might have been outside playing basketball with their kids and ruptured their Achilles or torn their meniscus. And so kind of being that middleman in between the physical therapy and what's next. Most people, I think, would decide on stop doing therapy and just going back to regular day life. But that's where I came in to kind of help those individuals. So I did that for about 3 years. And then I actually got terminated about 6 years ago. And that's where we kind of turned into the fact of Premier Performance Training kind of came to life. So long story short, I started with 2 clients. I was training in and out of an apartment complex. I was doing boot camps for, probably should have not been doing that for his liability, but that's the only access I had. Where I was doing stuff in the park and whatnot. And so I just built my clientele from there and ended up just renting for my guy locally in town for about 3 years until I ended up subleasing a section of a facility for the last 2. And then fast forward to about a week ago, I just opened up my new facility in Brentwood, Tennessee. That's solely mine. So that's a lot there, but that's kind of where.
Well, that's why I asked for.
Yeah, that's where I am. So I mean, I've done a lot over the years. It's just a matter of every small or every big experience has kind of led me to doing things that I'm doing now.
That sounds great. And yeah, so what I noticed when you were telling me here is that, like you said, over the last 12 years, you've done one thing or another. You've bounced from one place to another, and you've kind of taken in as much experience and as much knowledge as you can. It's kind of like grown you into the man that you are right now. So you've trained. And one thing I did notice too is because I think this is true of a lot of trainers, when people get their certification, they come out of school and they go into the personal training field, they probably have the idea that they're going to work with, young, capable athletic people like they are, and then they find out, well, yeah, there is a need for that, but there's also a greater need for the people who are not quite so young, not quite so capable. Like you said, the clients that nobody wants because they're in such disrepair that no one really knows where to start with them. And so I think that's probably a rude awakening. A lot of people who go into the fitness industry probably run into when they first step out.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of eye-opening experience when you think, I guess the first job was like, I think I know who I want to work with, but then you get somebody and you're like, I have no idea what to do or who to do. So I think it's being open to all opportunities as far as training. You're never going to find that one person you want to, but finding a group of people that you can help. And that's where I kind of, I guess going into the orthopedic side of things, I thought I knew a lot, but I knew a lot about nothing. So I was served, I guess you'd say, a piece of humble pie saying, hey, this is great, but you should be doing X, Y, and Z. And that was just, more of a teaching point with the physical therapist on hand. So that was kind of a learning curve too, but I think it was helpful, even though sometimes it felt like it was more, I don't say demeaning, or just they were kind of on me for like not doing the right thing. But when looking back on it, it was more of they were trying to teach me what to do as opposed to, hey man, you're doing everything wrong. So I think that's another thing to look at too.
Yeah. And in my experience too, is like when you go out there and you work with people that maybe don't fit your ideal image about who you're going to work with or who you want to work with, or maybe you get someone with some kind of special consideration like orthopedics, rehabilitation needs, or something like that. You're confronted with issues that you didn't really anticipate. And so you want to help this person because you're a fitness professional. You want to help people. And I think that's something that all of us want to really do at the end of the day. We want to help people. So you're confronted with something that you didn't anticipate. So this forces you to kind of step outside of what you thought you knew and do a bit more research. And it just kind of keeps building from there. I've run into that many times when I'm working with people. It's like, oh, I really don't even know where to begin with that. I want to help, but I got to go back into the drawing board here and find out what it is I'm actually dealing with and what the possible solutions could be. Is that similar to you?
Yeah, I think if you're able to, very similar, but it's more or less of like, you don't know until you really know. Mm-hmm. So in a way that's like, you've got to get the help you need to either ask questions, like you said, go back to the drawing board, do some research, figure out what you can really be successful with, and kind of learn from those different scenarios with clientele. I mean, I've had stroke patients. I've got a client right now with MS. I thought I knew about MS, but I don't know. And so every exercise or every day, as far as workouts, are different. And by different, it just means you could wake up and be feeling awesome. And then you could, there's days where you don't want to do anything. So there's the highs and lows of that, I say disease or that limitation, but there's something new with everybody. But I think if you can learn and try to educate yourself on a lot of things and not just be good at one thing, I think that's going to set yourself up for more long-term success in a way.
Right. So when I was looking into you, I noticed that you had a like you said specifically in your site that you work with people who are like 45 years and plus. Now, is that like an exclusive age range that you work with, or is it just kind of like, is that just part of what you work with? Like we work with elite athletes 45 plus, and it's just kind of, or is it?
Yes, that's more or less, I guess, my adult population.
Okay.
I like to consider that 45 plus. It's more, it's probably more of a 50 and up now. But I also work with like the sports performance side of things. So just more of the I guess I don't really I advertise the sports performance, but it's more or less I enjoy both. But as far as the adults go, I do have some former pro athletes, but it's also that clientele range I have found to be 45 plus, 50 plus. They are one, probably more determined to get better. Two, they have a little bit more flexibility. Three, I think they enjoy it more, or they like to show up and put in the work, and they're a little bit more consistent. With that, I've tried the 40 and below, and it's not for what I do. I feel like a lot of that just age range in a way is kind of more, not me. It's not your high intensity boot camps. It's not your, I don't know, / Orange Theory / a lot of running and grinding of the joints. A lot of things and people I see that are 45 up have been there, done those things, and just want to be more, move better, feel better, and live life pain-free without waking up with aches and pains and having to stretch for 45 minutes before they can lift a weight. So that's what I found that's more enjoyable for me. And so it's 45 to my oldest client is 81. And she comes 2 days a week. So that's just the group of people I like, I guess.
Did you end up growing to like that demographic a bit more, or was it like, it was kind of like an epiphany? It's like, oh, I really like working with these. I really like working with these folks. I like their actual kind of more calmed down approach to fitness.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, I did like that more. But when my business first opened, I was more sports performance heavy. So it was probably like 90-10 sports performance, 10% adults. And then I guess it was probably a year into it, I just kept sitting around twiddling my thumbs, wondering when the next client was going to come through the door. Was when I had to kind of flip script. With sports performance training is great, but it's usually after school. It's not before school. So if your hours are from like 4 to 8, that's awesome. But I don't like to be there every day from 4 o'clock to 8 p.m. So I flipped the script, and I found out to be more rewarding, more they're fun. They're a fun group of people. They're the camaraderie in the groups that I work with. Like I've got 2 ladies that are going on an overseas trip for 14 days, have never met each other before. People going out for coffee, I had a couple ladies Friday going to Costco to shop, even though they hang out in workout group, but they've never done anything outside of there. So my goal with that group and those, fun individuals is to, one, you've got to know everybody's name first and last. You should be able to hang out with each other outside of the gym and just have fun. And I found that from the sports performance side is great, but there's limitations because they can't drive. They can't get there sometimes on time. They have to switch things up all the time. And flipping it from there to the adults, it's more consistent. Everybody likes to show up. If they miss, people call each other out. It's just a lot of different things that you don't think about running a small business with that clientele. Like when you miss, they're always asking, hey, where's such and such? Where's Kim? Where's Mike? Where's Susan? And the next time they come in, they're like, oh, you missed. Where you been? So it's a lot of checks and balances and just checking in, making sure where people are and holding them accountable with that. So I think that's a little bit more fun on that side.
Exactly. So what do you think are some of because you work with a broad range of people, and you have before pretty much all throughout your career, what do you think are some of the distinctive issues that people who are on the older end of things, like 50 and above, really face? Other than just their age, which can be a barrier in itself. But broadly speaking, what do you think are some of the larger problems that they face that versus someone who is 22, 25 years old and doesn't have to?
Yeah, I think some of the main ones I find or I face are more hip mobility or hip issues, low back, lumbar, spinal issues, knee pain, And a lot of that's just from wear and tear, immobile joints over time. You're just used to doing the same old thing. So putting you a little bit outside your comfort zone as far as doing different things sometimes is helpful. Sometimes it can be hurtful. So hips, back, and I would say knees are probably the top three things I see. And some of it's just limitations of, it could be excessive overweight. They've just not really taken care of themselves. They could be in decent shape, but they're standing all day at work, or they're retired and they just sit all the time, or they've got a froze up joint because they didn't do physical therapy all the way. So those are some of the, I guess, most ones I see, but they're also some of the most difficult, because you feel like you can get one side of that, their body working well, and then it's the other side because of compensation, just lack of movement. And so the left side may be hurting, and now you get the left side feeling better, and now it's the right side with that. So, and that's across the board. I'll say the fourth one, Sean, would be shoulders. And I think that's more from lack of use. Joints get kind of, this lack of mobility, I've seen frozen shoulders, or just, partially torn labrums, or bone spurs. There's workarounds with that, but it's just, those are the most ones that I see in that population. And I'm sure there's more. I just don't see as many of the necks and the feet and other things like that.
Right. You think, like you said, you can work with one side, and then, you might achieve one victory over here, but then something else kind of lags behind it. You think that it's just a matter of just continuing to be consistent over time and continuing to work, or is there actually like a limitation that you're just going to hit a wall somewhere, and it's just really no further you can go, or is it just about continuing to explore possible options?
Yeah, so I always like approach that with, I say, how long did it take you to get here? It's going to take you twice as much to get back to where you need to be. And that may sound like too far-fetched, but it's like, if you haven't done anything in 5 years and your hips and knees and everything are hurting, it's going to take me more than 2 months to get everything working in the right direction. So I think time is one thing that if you can put the time in and be more consistent, I think those things can work themselves out. As well as, being a trainer, people are impatient, so they want that instant gratification. So I always like to just, just iterate, like, hey, you've only been here for 2 months. Like, I can't guarantee you anything feeling better and moving better, because one, I only see you for 2 days a week. That's maybe 8 sessions a month. So what are you doing outside of here? Are you just moping along, watching, reruns of your favorite show on Netflix when you're not here? Are you stretching? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping better? Are you walking? I don't know. So, I mean, those things is just, the timeline can be infinite, right? Or it can be short term, depending on you get out what you put into it. And I think sometimes people don't want to hear that, so therefore they just rather quit. I've heard this before, is like, I might as well just go back to what I was doing, because when I was doing, I wasn't gaining weight. I was actually maintaining my weight. And I'm like, okay, well, if you want to go back to just doing nothing, that's great, but you're still going to feel like crap. Even though your weight may stay the same, but your body's going to know the difference of inactivity, right? So there's just a lot of those, things you don't really want to hear, but it's just the things that people say. You're like, what?
That's exactly it. These are things that people don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Especially since when, they probably get bombarded with advertisements like everyone else does all the time, saying, you can get this in 90 days, get this in 60 days. And, they package miracles in a bottle. And so here you are out there saying, well, actually, this is going to be a process. And if you want actual results out of this, then you're going to have to be in it for the long haul. So how do you really talk to someone about that? How do you really make them come to terms with that reality?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but I always think about, I guess the way to think of it for some is, you came to me for a reason. You came to me because I'm the expert. So if you don't trust me, then you don't believe like what I'm telling you as far as like how long it's going to take. I mean, I'm happy to refer you to somebody else that's just going to give you a quick fix, but this is a long-term goal that you have, or maybe it's a short-term goal, but it's still going to take you longer than you really think to get there. So I think it's being more direct. I think has been helpful, even though people don't want to hear it. I think years past, I would say, I don't really know. And then they'd be like, well, if you don't know, then I shouldn't probably be here to train with you. And now I'm like, it's going to take you 2 years and you're going three days a week. If you can't do it then I'm terrible at what I do. So if you don't get any result, then I wasted your time, effort, and money. So I'm sorry, but this is just the way it's going to be for right now. Just have patience and then trust the process. But it's the impatient part. Like you said, they don't want to wait. It's too much of, well, my friend did this and they lost 15 pounds in the first month. I'm like, well, okay, well, your friend's genetically different. So, you can trade bodies with them if you want to, but I mean, we're just going to do what's working now and we're not going to change it. So until you maybe fix one thing, you're going to get better results.
Right. And your friend might have done something that in the long run is completely unhealthy. And it's
for sure.
It's going to backfire on them.
Well, it's comparison, right? I want to compare what my friend's doing with what I should be doing. So therefore it makes me look like I don't know what I'm doing. So that's where there comes the frustration part. But if I always say that if you can just do what's working for you and not worry about what everybody else is doing, you're probably going to be successful.
There you go. Yeah, just keep your head down and focus on what you're going after, and don't worry about everything else. Because that's easier said than done. We all do that too. Sure. I mean, we go to gyms, we work out, we see other people, we see someone doing whatever, we're impressed by it. It's like, wow, I'm gonna do that too. So
yeah,
but you don't know the full story of how they got to that point. They may have been working, steadily for 3 years just to do whatever it is you saw them do, that lift, that jump, that whatever. And here you see it, you've never done it before. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do that too. And you find out you can't, and then you're down yourself because you can't replicate what you just saw. So yeah, I know there's always a story you don't. This is what I tell people all the time. Especially when I have new clients, they come in and they look around, especially if they're older and if they're female. They come in, they look around, they see all these very young, very beautiful people, nice physiques everywhere, and they get immediately intimidated. And it's like, well, there's every one of them here is battling something you don't know. Just because they don't wear it on their clothes doesn't mean that it's not there. And you just have to bear that in mind.
Well, that's a good point, because most don't know. They just see what everybody's doing. I mean, social media is a bad part too, right? Mm-hmm. It's the good and bad and the ugly of social media, where it's, hey, I saw this trainer on this thing and we should do this today. Okay, great. Well, you can't lift your right arm and therefore we're not going to do that. So if you want to just be, unilaterally really big and strong on your right side, then that's great. But we're not doing that because it takes 2 arms to do that exercise. Or I saw this person eating this and I'm going to try it for 2 weeks. I was like, okay, well, they lost weight, right? Yeah, they did. They lost like 10 pounds in 4 weeks. So now I'm going to eat this way. Okay, well, I'll get back with you in 2 weeks to see if you're consistently doing that. So it's just a lot of those things. It's the good, bad, and the ugly, but it's also like we have a bad, I guess, time comparing ourselves. That's even with trainers or clients, whatever it is, because we see what other people are doing. We want to emulate that so we can have more success or get better results for other people. Sometimes that's not the best route, right?
Right. I've often complained, or I've pointed out on my social media that the fitness industry is far too youth-centric and far too, perhaps, performance-based. Is that your feeling as well?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it. There's not much until recently, I guess, seeing more. Since I cater toward that older population, I may be the only person in my area that really loves working with that group. And so I'd say they're missing out on the opportunity to deal with the older generation, to help them be better and be, I'll say, better contributors to society or just to the community. But I think, yeah, and what I mean by that is just they're able to do more. They're able to volunteer more, do things they didn't think they were possible to do because of their limitations. But yeah, I think it's catered to more the higher intensity interval boot camp training that you're going to, sweat really hard for 60 minutes and just be jacked for that. It doesn't matter what you like to do. It's just, I think there is a lack of, I guess, I would say involvement, but just catering to that population of like 50 and up. They don't, I guess some don't feel like there's a need to work with those people because they're just, there's not much they can do. They're not athletic enough. So therefore I don't want to work with them. But the flip side is if you can make them athletic enough, I mean, I've got 62, 63-year-old deadlifting, trap bar deadlifting, bench pressing, and some even like to squat. So I think there's just a missing piece of that puzzle that people don't see. They see them as old, not able to do a whole lot, and it's just going to be a boring session.
Yeah. But maybe the session shouldn't be all that exciting for you anyway.
So, yeah, for sure. I think it's more about them and less about you, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, well, this is not, the high intensity classes, they have utility. I've done them before. I've taught them before. And yeah, they're hella fun. I won't deny that. But it's not really training, it's exercise.
Sure.
It's movement for its own sake. And I think that's different from training, whereas you're actually focusing on one or maybe two people, and you actually have like a specified goal in mind, and you're objectively measuring that goal as you go along. It's programmed,
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't sound very exciting. That sounds very tedious. That sounds very, very clerical in a way. And I think a lot of us, and I know I did, when we stepped out into this industry, we kind of had that mistaken belief in mind that this is just going to be good fun all the time.
Yeah, I think that's where some trainers will, make it or break it, right? It's if it's not fun, or if you're kind of I would call it a deadbeat during your session. You're just kind of like 1, 2, and then you're not really correct. You're not really in it. It's probably not the person for you. So maybe you should reconsider the clientele age range for that. And I mean, I've taught boot camps. They're fun. They're great. You can beat people down and make them feel like you're the worst person ever. But I said you can also do that with the older population too. I mean, I train in groups of small group training, 4 to 6 people. We all have individualized programs. We're all cutting up, having fun, taking jabs at one another, shooting the bull, whatever. It's that we're joking around, having fun. But at the end of the workout, I mean, some people, depending on how intently they're going, they're dead. They've had a good workout, and others are just like, man, that was great. But you would never know it because, they're not really sweating. The look on their face is like, that was a good workout for today. Mm-hmm. There's no change as far as like expression, but it's also, once they leave, you're kind of like, man, I did a good job today. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need to find new clients because these people are boring, or I was bored, So I think it's, you can, I don't know, you can change things, the way or the approach you do things to make things better for you, but also for the client experience as well, for them in a way.
So when you started working with older people, I want to put this out there because on the chance that, there's other trainers out there that listen to this show or listening to this podcast, and, they're kind of having the same idea we have. It's like, the older population, it's like you said, it's much more stable. It's in retirement now. It's a baby boomers. A lot of them, they're in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. They're retired. They have more money to burn, and they're just, in terms of business, it makes a little bit more sense to actually work with them. And it can be very rewarding, as we have found. So what are some of the mistakes you would say you've made when you've worked with this demographic as opposed to the one that you are more accustomed to, as a younger man?
I think probably the biggest one is probably progressing too quickly as far as like session by session. And what that means for me is like you feel like they're ready, but then you throw something at them and they're like, there's no way in heck I can do that. So I think it takes longer for them to progress. For some, not all. Just depends on if they've done anything before. And longer to progress just means we may be doing the same redundant 15 exercises, but we're going to manipulate that way from their sets and reps or time, whatever it may be, to let them have a better experience for the 15 exercises that they can do. And then we're going to progress, where sometimes I would probably get in and they're like, man, this is feeling great. This is easy. And then I'd make it harder. And they're like, I can't do this. So therefore I've tried to jump the gun too quickly and, do things too fast. For instance, I had a 80-year, she's 81. I thought she was ready to get on the rower because it was a thing that I wanted to progress her to after like 5 weeks. And she just physically couldn't get low enough to sit down on the rower to use it. So she told me directly, I'm not ready. I can't do this. I can't do this. And so, I just politely said, hey, I'm sorry. I just forgot, might have jumped it too soon. So we just went to a non-weighted sled push. And I think that was super helpful. So I think the biggest thing is just progressing too quickly, or thinking before you know. That's probably the second thing. You think you know how to work with them, but then you don't know because you have no experience with that person. I'm trying to think. Like I had a guy who he had gray matter disease, which just means he's got a lot of like mini strokes he's had, and so his reaction time and balance was just pretty poor. And so I tried to do things, I don't know, that I didn't think would be a problem, but were a problem. So therefore I should have probably asked to get more clarification from somebody who's a little bit smarter than me to say, hey, this is the person I have, and this is what I'm thinking about doing. So therefore, is this a great idea? And by asking, it's not another colleague. It'd be, I have a list of physical therapists or orthopedic doctors in town that I like to go to for information, who are kind of in my back pocket. So I like to ask before. So I think the biggest mistake was not asking or thinking I knew the right answer. And when you think you probably don't. So you probably should ask and then go. But that's probably the top two, just for me. It's not an ego thing of like knowing everything, but just being sure that you have the right understanding of what's going on with a person to put them in a better situation and lead to better results down the road. Because you don't want them getting hurt on like the third workout, and then you're like, oh crap, I've got to explain to them why I don't know what I'm doing, so therefore he's going to quit. So I think the biggest, things you can learn from that is always ask first, and then find somebody who can be helpful second, and progress slowly rather than quickly, real slow, like maybe every 8 weeks or 9 weeks instead of every 4.
Right. And Aaron, what I found too is like when I'm working with older people is that constant feedback to me helps me a lot from them, because because I'm constantly asking them, how's it feel? Does it feel okay? How's it doing? And I'm always just prodding them for more and more information. And I think if you do that with anybody, but especially with an older client, because they worry about getting hurt a lot, because a lot of times they're already, they feel more comfortable to actually open up and be honest, because they see that your concern is legit, and saying like, because they won't just fight through it or just feel like they should be able to do something just because, you're the professional and say, okay, now we're doing this. But if they actually kind of, I guess in a way, advocate for themselves, saying, no, I can't. I know I can't. It doesn't feel right. I need to step back. And I think that's critical when you're working with older people here, because then you can see that the feedback is genuine, and then okay, we can step back. Then that's okay. We can regress and do something else, or we can continue on. And it's a great reciprocal and respectful relationship between trainer and client.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. It's always finding what's working for them in the time or in the moment. Have you ever gotten the client who you can tell by their facial expressions that this is probably not a great position or exercise to be in or to do, but they're going to fight through that first set, and then by that second set they're like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really feel this where I'm supposed to, so let's try something else. I get that quite a bit, but it's more or less they don't want to be told they can't do it initially. It's like, hey, this is something different, we're going to try it, give me feedback, let me know where you feel it the most. If you don't feel it where we're supposed to, which for this exercise maybe the hamstrings, let me know and we'll go to plan B. And usually they're like, that felt okay. And I'm like, all right, please explain that. What's okay feel to you? Did you feel it where you're supposed to? Not really. Okay, so it's going to be give and take, right? They're going to tell you they don't feel it. We're going to adjust if we have to adjust multiple times, and we're probably just not there yet for that exercise. So we're going to move on. So yeah, I completely agree with that. More feedback, the more you can ask, the more you can get info more from them during that exercise or during that entire session is going to be more helpful than hurtful.
Right. Have you ever had someone who had to who really just pushed back against anything you suggested, to the point where it was like kind of defeating the purpose of why they were even with you in the first place, because
yeah, I mean, I've had that a couple times, but that's a tough position to be because they're, it's not the client's always right, but it was a individual referral, been with me for about a year. And while I was trying new exercises, because, you just get tired of the same routine. And it's like, nah, I don't think we're going to do that today. Nah, I don't think that's a good one. And I'm thinking, all right, let me think about this. All right, you're telling me that this hurts and that hurts, and if we do this, then it's not gonna be worse. But then you would do the exercise, and they're like, "Nah, I don't think that's a good one today." But I think there's a lot of pushback. So I just said, "Yeah, we're just gonna go back to In my head, I didn't really say anything, out loud, but in my head, I'm thinking like, "Oh my gosh, if we have to go back to the same exercises again, I guess it's going to be okay, but it's going to be redundant and boring." But I mean, she was like all in on that. And it was because of her back didn't feel great or her leg didn't feel great. And so during session, it was almost like it was semi-argumentative, but also like trying to be like, all right, well, if it doesn't feel good, then that's on you, but we can do it again. So, I'm just going to sit over here and watch you do this exercise we did the last 4 times we were here. But yeah, I do have that. And some of it's jokingly and some of it's like, nah, I'm not doing that ever.
Yeah, hard pass, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to put you in the best position physically and exercise-wise to put you, set you up for success. But if you're that adamant of not doing it, then we're not going to do it. So don't bring it up again.
How do you coach people, anybody, not just older people? How do you coach people to know the difference between discomfort and pain? Because a lot of times when you're going through progressions, you're going to hit probably another level of discomfort. You've done these exercises for 8 weeks now. You're pretty comfortable with it. It doesn't seem like you really have to really work at it very much. And so it's time to step it up a little bit. This is how you get the gains. You constantly challenge yourself. You constantly ratchet it up a little bit within reason. And this is how you get stronger. This is how anything gets stronger. How do you negotiate that with somebody who is just very adamantly like, no. I like this. Let's keep to this. I don't want any more.
Yeah, you can try, I guess, in a way, be more upfront on an explanation. I always say pain is hurtful to the touch, discomfort, or soreness. Pain and soreness are different, right? Mm-hmm. Soreness is like, oh man, that feels like I got a good workout, and you may be a little stiff. You're walking around, you feel like your muscles got worked, but the discomfort wise and the painful side of things is like, man, that really hurts, and it hurts for more than 48 hours, maybe 72, maybe it's 4 days in a row. You can distinguish that by, more feedback, right? So it's like, what did we do to make it so painful that you couldn't go home, or over the weekend you couldn't walk the dog, or you couldn't do this? And some of it's just being maybe in bad position and not catching it on the first set. Maybe it's the second set, third set, or, maybe they did something over the weekend and they kind of relay that pain to something we did in the workout. In reality, it wasn't. So we kind of have to do I call it like a session overview or a session reassessment. Sometimes you kind of say, hey, this is how I feel. This is what we did. What do you think hurt it? What do you think was the determining factor that you couldn't do X, Y, and Z for the last 4 days? And sometimes we're like, I don't know. Okay, well, are you just sore? Or is it like really hurt? And then sometimes it's always like, it really hurt. And so we have to kind of like peel the layers back and kind of figure out like why it hurts. What did you do differently? Did you sleep weird? Did you try to do something at home? Did you, leave the session and it hurt? Or did it hurt 2 days after? Or is it just physically, you're in pain? I don't know. So there's a lot of things you have to kind of like assess, reassess, and assess again to kind of figure out what's really going on with them. Because some will tell me initially that really hurt. I don't want to do that. Or I was in so much pain for 3 days that whatever exercise we did the last time, we're not going to do it, or we're going to go lighter with that. So I think that's a challenge. You've probably found that to be a challenge as well. It's like, what is really a pain point and what is really a soreness or discomfort? Everybody's different, because I have a lady she's got a huge pain tolerance. She's had hip variable surgery. She's got a bone spur in her shoulder, and we're just kind of trucking right along. So some days it's like that really hurt, and other days it's like I'm just sore. So it's tough, but you have to kind of be sensitive, or I won't say sensitive, but just kind of open to suggestions on what you should do different, right? Because if you're not, you're putting them back in a difficult position that they're not going to want to do that thing again, or be that sore or that, in pain, right? So you kind of have to adjust, readjust, and figure out why this is happening, right?
It can be all the more challenging too, because when you request this kind of information, this kind of feedback from somebody, what you're asking them to do too is actually assume some responsibility for their own well-being and their own fitness here too, because you're asking, for information. It's like, well, when you were home, when you weren't with me, and you went about your activities of daily living, did you do anything different? It's like you're doing some detective work here. Did you do anything different? Did anything else feel differently? Did you go, run around the park with your grandson real rigorously, and that's why you feel this sore today, that kind of thing. So you're kind of always just kind of like probing, and they have to actually stop. Like, well, yeah, maybe I did overdo it a little bit with my grandson yesterday, and maybe that's why I'm sore today. And it's not being dismissive of what they're going through, but it's actually, because again, it's a collaborative environment here, and everything. Everything has to be taken in holistically.
Yeah, and sometimes they may not remember until like the next session, right? Or maybe the session after that. It's like, oh yeah, I remember I did this, and that's why it hurt so bad. I forgot. So it wasn't the workout; it was this. And so it's like, okay, cool. Now we're good, right?
So one thing I wanted to ask you though, I want to run something by you here. So I have kind of this thought where. I have the fitness industry has like senior workouts and senior this and senior that, but stuff that is designated for people of a certain age. So I kind of think, and you can tell me what your thoughts about this are, but I kind of think that that's kind of misguided, and it's kind of based on assumptions that might be an implicit bias, Whereas if you're working with somebody, say if they're older, maybe in their 70s or something like that, you can kind of go about them in a similar way as you would with anyone else, just maybe with anyone that you would take on that has certain impingements, like physically or surgeries or anything like that, or some sort of rehabilitative need. It's really not terribly, in my experience, I haven't found to be terribly different. So it kind of makes me wonder, is this senior exercises or senior fitness stuff, is this really something that has any actual merit, or is it just kind of a brand of marketing?
Yeah, that's funny you asked that. I just got another, I think it's senior exercise specialist certification just because, man. I didn't think I needed it, but it was one of those I was like, I could read it, but I'm just going to take the test. Passed it, and it's more, yeah, it was, I thought it was like super simple, but it was a lot of just preventative stuff, right? If you're a senior and you want more preventative stuff, that's going to it's going to inhibit or hinder you in certain ways of doing things you want to do, right? So if we can add strength training modalities to that, balance training, hand-eye coordination with that, I think that's going to be more successful for those people than just working on stretching and I don't know. I just feel like there's too simplistic for the senior population, right? If you want to get stronger and be stronger and lift things out of your cupboards, or crouch down to pick your cane up if you drop it, or you want to go from your walker to a cane to no cane, there's other things you have to do besides, I guess, I don't know if say baby it or the most simple things. There's more complexity to that you need to do for those seniors. So I think it's kind of just a title, and it's not all encompassing. There's people that physically have senior limitations, right? But there's also those that are my 81-year-old client who's, man, she's a whip. She's in there, she's rocking and rolling. She does everything on her own. She doesn't want you to help her. She's just there, right? So she's older than anybody I've worked with in the past, and she doesn't need help. She just wants to be better physically, mentally, and emotionally, and and do things that she didn't think she could do, right? So I think the label on that is it limits a lot of different people that are in the senior category. But there's also those things you can kind of probably take from those exercises and implement it and make them more complex to help that population be more successful.
Right. Sure. I think just in general, it's too limiting, and it just kind of assumes just way too much. And
yeah,
I think it's also just somewhat condescending, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It's like, you're a senior, right? What does that mean? I mean, it's like getting the discounts, right? It's like, yeah, that's great, but I feel wonderful. I feel like I'm 50, 45, 30. Yeah. So it's a weird label you put on it.
Right. And in the fitness industry, the word senior is taking on more and more of a relative interpretation. Because, I'm a few months out from my 40th birthday here, and I feel like I'm kind of getting towards what some might call senior.
Yeah, well, you feel like that number is going to get lower and lower, right? I think it's after your 50-something birthday, you get your AARP card, so it'll eventually be like 45, 40, and the numbers, the gap of a senior would be like this.
Mm-hmm. Right. So eventually, it'll be who isn't a senior will be anyone who isn't 18 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Can sprint in 100-meter dash in 10 seconds, right? So
yeah,
but so that's an interesting take. And yeah, I did look into that senior specialist thing myself too, because I figured, I don't know if it really means a whole lot, but I think that if it's one more thing I can add to my resume, it might give me some additional clout.
Yeah, it gives you just that. That one up, I guess. So if people are looking, they kind of know you're the guy, not some place down the street who thinks they are.
Right. Exactly right.
More validation, right?
So what are some of the common misconceptions about, I keep bringing it back to the older population because that's my area of interest and that's who I like to try to speak to the most, but what are some of the misconceptions that people have? And we've already touched on this earlier about working with people who are 45, 50 years old that you feel industry-wide?
Well, that's a good question. Misconceptions of that population. They can't do a whole lot. One, false. Two, they're not fun. False. They're awesome. This is probably the most fun I have with these group of people. They got stories for days, man. Just the wisdom and stories they shared to kind of help me, right? And three, I would say you're just limited to what you can do. I mean, that's what most people probably think. I mean, I've got a lot of the population, man. We're deadlifting, we're RDLing, we're doing step ups, we're doing the rowers, the bikes, we're doing med ball slams. The only thing we're not doing is burpees and box jumps, right? And that's what they love about what I do. It's like, well, man, the last place I went, I have at 60. What is she? 67 years old, and they looked at her one day and said, "You got to run a lap, 4 laps around the building." And I don't know, there was a time frame. She said, "Nah, I don't think so. Not this lady. I'm too old for that crap." And so when she came to me, I was like, "Well, we don't run laps around the building. We don't do burpees, box jumps. We don't." She goes, "I'm in the right place." so yeah, it's just you can do a lot with a little. But I think they can do more than you really think they can, right? So don't ever count somebody out who's maybe that senior 50 and up, because once they're able to move better, feel better, and get more confident, and they're going to come in, man. If they miss, they're gonna know they missed, and they're kind of pissed about it. They look forward to coming in. They're fired up when they get there, and they're ready to rock and roll. So there's not a lot of moaning and groaning except for new exercises or stuff. They're like, "Oh man, this one again. I don't like this one." I said, "Well, it's great that you don't like it, but it's good for you. So we're going to do it again. It's going to be a good one today. So let's just get your mind right." So I think those are the three. And I mean, you can put 4 in there. You're not going to make any money training seniors or the older population. That's bullcrap. That's 90% of what I do. And I love it, and they appreciate it, and they're willing to refer their friends because they know they've found a spot that can treat them the right way. They can meet them where they are, do what they've asked, and also make sure they don't get hurt. Right.
Exactly right. So the dovetail that, where do you think in your estimation, where do you think the fitness industry is really headed? Because I think social media still plays a big part in fitness, just because it does. But I think that as people are growing more and more aware of how it kind of skews what fitness is and what it really does and the purpose it serves, I think there's kind of a growing movement, especially if we're talking about people who are on the older end of things here, and then they're seeing things that don't really apply to them, or it's things that they're not at all interested in. I mean, it's very flashy on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. But I feel like there's kind of a growing awareness. It's like, this is not what's up. So, I don't know, your take on that?
I don't know, trend. I'm not a trendy
big
guy.
Question.
So.
That's a big question. I know.
Yeah. So I think it's going. I don't know. That's always a what do I think type question. The fitness is always going to be there. It's just a matter of what you like and what you want to do, right? So there's a lot more of the large group classes, the HIIT classes, and things like that. But as far as for like what I do, I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. What I've seen change is people wanting more like one-to-one training, and that's because they haven't done anything in the last 3 years, so they're not as confident in wanting to join like a small group. And small group, Sean, or I take 6 people in a group, and so they'll do 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months of one-on-one, and they're like, all right, I think I'm ready. So just building that confidence level back up, being more aware of what they can do, more or less, because nothing worse than comparing yourself to somebody else in a group. But I always tell them, man, it's like we're in here for one reason. That's to improve our health and fitness, no matter what you think is possible. So if we can all do that and be on the same page, then we're all going to get along and be great, no matter if you're 40 or 70. So I don't think that's going anywhere. The one-on-one training may pick up a little bit more. And I think online training is still going to stay. I do online training, and I didn't have that business model until COVID. So it's still there, and it's for some and not for others. I don't advertise it, but I think it's still going to be something where it's an option, right? With that. So that's kind of where I think, I don't know of any other, there's a lot of the at home things. I keep seeing Peloton bikes on Marketplace selling for like half of what people bought it for. So I'm not sure that people want more of that. I don't know. Could be way off on that, but I feel like they want more human to human interaction, the camaraderie, the checks and balances of like, all right, you're showing up, you're doing great. As opposed to just, high-fiving somebody on a television screen.
Right. I think you're right about that. I think Peloton hit it big for a good reason, because COVID just, banged everyone over the head a couple years ago. So in-person fitness classes were either not happening at all, or if they were under extreme limited capacity. And so Peloton really capitalized on it. But then coming out of it, thirst for human connection and human relationships was really surged back. And I have nothing against online training at all. But I think, the one-on-one stuff, or at least if you can replicate that the best you can, if only viral, is probably the key item there.
Yeah, it is more like I've had more inquiries of one-on-one the last probably 3 months, and I don't mind it. It's just it's meeting people where they are and making them feel more comfortable and confident on the things they can do. So I mean, with that, I think I've seen an uptick with that, but also, like you said, the interaction of like actually talking to other people. I said virtually is good, but I don't know if I'm in a virtual class, how many people are you actually going to build relationships with, or you can go hang out outside of workouts, especially if you're all over the U.S. or wherever you may be, right? Right. So I think that's the difficult side. You can still have that, I don't know, camaraderie on screen, but it's like what happens off screen, or what happens, in the gym is great, but I also like to say what happens outside of it's even better, because that's friendships being born, that's people hanging out and having fun, but also just, being together, I guess. It's a little bit different than just being on a screen.
So you mentioned earlier that you just changed locations. You just moved to a new location in your business. So where are you going to go to from your business? From here in your business here, was this like a larger facility? Or?
Yeah, so it's a larger facility. So like I call it my old stomping grounds. I started in Brentwood, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I moved to Franklin, which is like 2 miles away. For this area, it's a huge population. So it takes about 15 minutes to get from my old location to the place I just was. And then I just moved back to Brentwood. So I say it's back to my old stomping grounds. It's a bigger facility. It's nicer. It's a lot more spacious. It's good for what I want to do. And I've already had a lot of old clients hit me up and saying, man, I'm ready to rock and roll after 2 years of not wanting to drive to where I was. So, I mean, it's good. It's good to be back to where I kind of got my start as far as training in this area. And I've built a lot of relationships over the years, and I hope to build more in this area and just reach more people. So it's been good so far, but only a weekend, and man, it's been a blast so far.
Yeah. So as we start to wind down here now, is because one thing I like to do as a closing tradition, because we tend to talk about a lot of different things in the space of an hour, is that if you can leave people with one thing to remember, maybe one thing only, what do you think it would be?
Don't overcomplicate. And I can explain that and go for probably 30 minutes, but just don't overcomplicate things. If you're confident on the product you put out, then it's good. A lot of people don't ask for the ins and outs of why you program things. They just want to know that you're putting them in a good position and put them in a good place for success. When I say don't overcomplicate it, don't second guess yourself with those things. And that's anything. That's from your workout program to your business or whatever it is. I that's one mistake I probably made, is trying to be too complicated and people don't care. Simplicity is best.
Right. It's probably it's an imposter syndrome probably sinking in. It's like,
Oh yeah, for 100%.
yeah, 100%. Like if I don't make this look and sound brilliant, people are gonna think I'm a moron.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that we're going back to our certifications. Is like, I've had one person in 12 years ask me, "What are your credentials?" I mean, if you put good product out there and you get good results, people are going to talk about you. So you shouldn't have any problem getting clients in the door.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I think it's a great place to end it there. Well, Aaron, thanks so much for showing up, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. It's been a pleasure.
Good. So, all right. So, everyone who's listening here, I will put all of Aaron's social media and connections and website on the show notes as usual. Don't forget that you can contact me. The email address for me is on there as well. You can also, as of right now, you can sponsor Fitness Reborn, so I can get more guests on like Aaron. We have great conversations here. That link will be provided as well. And so thanks so much again, Aaron, for showing up. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you to everyone here who's listening to this podcast. This is the Fitness Reborn podcast. My name is Sean, and I'll see you all next time. Move forever. Take care.